Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving deep into a really pivotal moment in the New Testament, Matthew chapter 10. This is where Jesus commissions his 12 apostles for their very first mission.
So, to really get what's happening, we've got to start with the problem Jesus saw. Right before chapter 10, he looks out at the huge crowds, and his heart just breaks for them. He sees them as totally lost, wandering, leaderless, kind of like sheep without a shepherd. And it's that deep compassion that really sparks the mission he's about to launch.
All right, so here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to start with how the team gets picked, then follow them out on their specific mission. We'll get into the rules, the risks, and finally, we'll look at the incredible promise that's waiting at the end.
Okay, first things first, Jesus has to assemble his team. And this is not some casual, off-the-cuff decision. No, this comes right after he spent an entire night in prayer. Then he calls 12 of his disciples and gives them something absolutely extraordinary: real authority over unclean spirits and the power to heal every single kind of disease. And here they are, the 12 apostles. This wasn't just some random group of followers. This was a big deal. This was like the formal establishment of the kingdom of God on earth, with a brand new leadership structure put in place.
Now pay close attention to the wording here, because it's so important. Matthew specifically calls Peter the first. See, this isn't just the first name in a list. It's a clear signal of Peter's primary role among the 12, and it totally foreshadows his future position as the rock, the head of the church after Jesus ascends.
So, the team is assembled. Now Jesus gives them their marching orders. And this mission isn't to the whole world. Not yet, anyway. It's actually highly specific and really targeted.
And check this out. This is where it all connects. When Jesus tells them to go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, he's plugging directly into Old Testament prophecies from people like Isaiah and Jeremiah. He's identifying God's own covenant people, Israel, who were spiritually wandering because their leaders, their shepherds, had failed them. The true shepherd was finally here to gather his flock.
All right, now for the rules of the road. And let me tell you, these are not what you'd expect. In fact, they're pretty counterintuitive, but they're designed to teach a huge lesson in faith.
He basically tells them to take nothing: no money, no extra food, not even a second coat. The whole point here is total, complete reliance on God to provide and on the hospitality of the people who would receive their message. As Jesus puts it, the workman is worthy of his meat.
But what happens if a town rejects them? Well, Jesus gives them this really powerful symbolic instruction. See, in that culture, washing a guest's feet was a huge sign of hospitality. So to leave a town with dusty feet was a clear sign you were refused. Shaking that dust off was basically a public testimony. It meant the apostles had done their part, and now the responsibility and the consequences rested squarely on those who rejected God's messengers.
Okay, so things take a pretty sharp turn right here. After the mission briefing, the tone shifts dramatically. Jesus gives them a very stark, very sober warning about the reality of what's coming.
He does not sugarcoat it one bit. He's sending them out as vulnerable sheep right into a pack of predatory wolves. Their only way to survive, it's going to take this unique combination of shrewd wisdom, like a serpent, and pure, innocent character, like a dove. And make no mistake, these warnings weren't just some abstract idea. Jesus literally prophesied they'd be dragged before governors and kings. And if you read the book of Acts or other historical records, that is exactly what happened. Peter, James, Paul, they all ended up standing trial before the highest authorities of their day, fulfilling this prophecy to the letter.
So it all boils down to this, really. The disciple is not above his master. I mean, if the world slandered and rejected Jesus himself, and they did, even accusing him of being Beelzebub, the prince of demons, then why would his followers expect any better treatment? It just comes with the territory. It's part of the package of discipleship.
Now, after laying out all that danger, all that doom and gloom, you might be thinking, who would sign up for this? Well, Jesus immediately gives them the antidote. This whole section is a powerful command to replace all that fear with a radical kind of courage.
You gotta notice the repetition here. It's so intentional. 3 times in just a handful of verses, Jesus says, "Fear not." He is drilling this point home, because for these disciples, who were about to face ridicule, prison, and even death, this was the single most important message they needed to hear.
And he doesn't just say, "Don't be afraid," and leave it at that. No, he gives them rock-solid reasons. First, don't fear because the truth you're preaching will eventually come out. Second, don't fear because your enemies have a very limited reach. Sure, they can harm the body, but they can't touch the eternal soul. And finally, don't fear, because God's care for you is so personal, so complete, that He knows the exact number of hairs on your head. You are worth more than you can imagine to Him.
So this brings us to one of the biggest and maybe most confusing parts of the mission. The Prince of Peace says he didn't come to bring peace, but a sword. So, how does that work? Well, the gospel brings peace between a person and God. But its absolute truth claims often creates sharp division with a world that rejects it. And yeah, sometimes that division happens right inside your own family.
So, after detailing the immense cost of following Him, Jesus ends the chapter on this incredibly powerful and encouraging promise about the reward. What Jesus does here is amazing. He creates this unbreakable chain of identity. He basically says, when people welcome you, they're welcoming me. And when they welcome me, they're welcoming God the Father who sent me. I mean, that just elevates the stakes of hospitality to a completely divine level.
And get this, it shows that no act of kindness, no matter how small, goes unnoticed. Even something as simple as giving one of His disciples a cup of cold water just because they belong to Him, that's an act that God Himself sees, He records it, and He will eternally reward it.
Which leaves us with a final thought to chew on. Jesus makes it crystal clear that following Him means to take up His cross, to willingly go through trials for His sake. This whole chapter frames discipleship not as a path of comfort and ease, but as one of cost, conflict, and ultimately an incredible reward. And it really forces us to ask ourselves, what does that kind of commitment look like for us today?